Good morning. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Sean Auckland, a program manager at SPEAR for South Central Partnership for Energy Efficiency as a Resource. The program that I run is called the City Efficiency Leadership Council, and this is our June monthly webinar for CELC. I'm really excited about the presentation today with Katie Hatcher, Energy Star National Manager and Public Sector, and also she has a colleague joining her as well, Anthony, and they will both introduce themselves a little bit later. For those of you who are less familiar with the program with the City Efficiency Leadership Council, it's a program of the State Energy Conservation Office and a partnership with HARC, where are primarily an outreach and education focused program to support public sector energy management in Texas and Oklahoma. City is in the title, but we do offer these resources and conversations to all sorts of public sector entities, including county universities, school districts, and school boards. We offer webinars, regional roundtable meetings, technical resources, and reports. If you have not done so, we encourage you to take some time to browse our local government section on our website. Here you'll find information on local government energy reporting, more about CELC, and our City Efficiency Toolkit. To all of those who are attending today, you'll receive a follow-up information about the program, as well as resources from this presentation. And you can also send me any questions you may have or would like to get more involved with SPEAR. And something I always like to add with any presentation is that there are times where you need to be compassionate with technology. So there may be some moments in the transition. And so here's some further information about CELC. A couple of announcements. We have an upcoming conference, a SPEAR, a summit on September 2nd and 3rd. We are excited to be announcing that SPEAR will be offering an in-person conference this year. We understand that the thought-provoking discussions and in-person networking is very important to furthering development in energy efficiency in Texas and Oklahoma. So we will have it in San Antonio, and the Hyatt has been a brand leader in getting their hotels cleanliness certified, even down to the air conditioning using more outside air instead of recycling indoor air. So it'll be safe during this time. And we'll be covering important and current topics: electrification, building infrastructure, building resiliency, demand response, energy storage, and the role energy efficiency plays into grid resiliency, and so much more. And there are scholarships available for all public sector and nonprofit employees. So you should be able to join the conference for free if you work for a public or nonprofit organization. Just feel free to reach out to me. And I also want to add that we are offering CEUs today. So in order to receive the resources and CEU certificate, you must fill out the survey from this webinar. And I also must see that if you were on the call, and if I don't see your name in the attendee list or on the call, then I can't give you any CEUs. If you're using a phone number, please let me know that you're calling in on what phone number and send me an email so I can connect you and provide you that CEU certificate. A couple of housekeeping items. All attendees, you are muted, but you can raise your hand or send comments and questions in the chat feature, and we can address them at the end of the presentation. Also, if you have any other announcements, please put them in the chat box. It's going to be the primary way of communicating during our webinar today. Make sure and select the drop-down option to send your questions to all panelists and all attendees if you want folks to see your question. You also have the option to send your question directly to me or Kat without the entire group seeing it. Please use the chat function, and hopefully we can have a lot of great questions today. Before we move on, Kat, Anthony, I want to make sure that you can see my screen and that we're going to now transition So over to our speaker today, Katie Hatcher with Energy Star, National Public Manager and the National Manager with Public Sector with EPA. I'm so glad you're here, Katie, and I will let you take it away and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great, thank you so much. I'm really glad to be presenting to all of you today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So let's see, yes. So bear with me 1 minute. Make sure I share the right one. That's an important thing. Okay. Sorry about that. Of course, a note just popped up in front of my, my button to do the slide. There we go.
It looks great, Katie.
Great. Thank you. Sorry about that. So again, I'm Katie Hatcher. I am EPA Energy Star's National Manager for the Public Sector. And I've been working with EPA on the Energy Star program for 26 plus years and helping organizations improve their energy efficiency and integrate indoor air quality improvements into their energy management efforts. And here with me today, I've got Anthony Albano. He's an associate at the Cadmus Group, and he's contracted by EPA to support the Energy Star program. So I'm going to provide an introduction to our tools and resources that we have that can help you in your organizations advance energy efficiency. And then I'm going to turn it over to Anthony to provide a demonstration of an integral tool to our resource suite, which is called Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So hopefully many of you have heard of Energy Star, and it's probable that you think of it as being this little blue symbol that's on many products that you can purchase. It is our national symbol for energy efficiency. And we also certify homes and buildings and industrial plants as Energy Star. And Energy Star is defined as being top in the nation in terms of energy performance. In order to help encourage commercial building owners, which includes public sector organizations and school districts and so forth, any kind of commercial building property type and multifamily, large scale multifamily properties, in order to encourage them to understand their energy consumption, we created a tool that's free and available to use called Portfolio Manager. And to date, there's more than 270,000 buildings that are being tracked in Portfolio Manager. And it originated as a voluntary initiative through the EPA program, and it still is out there for voluntary use. However, there's been an interesting trend where many states and localities have mandated the use of Portfolio Manager for either their government-owned properties, and also a rising trend has been to actually mandate the use of it for private sector organizations to track energy and sometimes water data and report that data to the local governments on an annual basis. These benchmarking initiatives are growing across the country, and Portfolio Manager is the tool that's used to implement all of them. So again, it's a voluntary tool offered by the EPA. However, it's also become integrated in some of the fabric of what states and local governments are doing to try to advance energy efficiency in commercial buildings. So more about the tool. It's an energy management tool for users who manage a portfolio of buildings or a single building. And so, as I mentioned, you can track energy usage. You can also track water usage. We added some features a few years back to allow for recycling and waste management tracking. You can also track your green power purchases. And the important thing in terms of it being a management tool, it helps you understand your relative performance over time and also compared to various benchmarks that we have. You can create many reports, and we'll talk about those later on, and Anthony will demonstrate them. And it's also the pathway to apply for Energy Star certification for eligible building types. One feature of Portfolio Manager that's pretty cool is the ability to share properties with each other and essentially have many people within an organization or across different organizations entering data and helping with the benchmarking process for a particular facility. Here are some of the metrics that I wanted to highlight for you that come out of Portfolio Manager. It tracks and measures things like source energy use intensity and site energy use intensity. It also has a weather normalization feature that helps you understand relative performance adjusted for weather. And we have water use intensity tracking as well. Plus we have the 1 to 100 Energy Star score for many building types. And then we also have a similar score for multifamily for water. We calculate greenhouse gas emissions in terms of direct and indirect. In terms of direct scope 1, indirect scope 2, and then also total emissions and emissions avoided. Here are the many property types that can earn an Energy Star 1 to 100 score. However, for the property types that cannot have a 1 to 100 score due to data constraints, we do provide median energy use intensities in terms of site and source based on, typically those are based on a random unbiased survey sample called CBEX, the Commercial Building Energy Consumption Survey. So more about Energy Star certification. So as I mentioned, we created this scale from 1 to 100. So what a Portfolio Manager is doing when you enter a building, for example, a school, it's comparing that school to schools across the nation, and the underlying survey sample or the reference data set that it's being compared to is that Commercial Building Energy Consumption Survey that I mentioned. A building is not being compared to other buildings within Portfolio Manager. We use these outside data sources as reference data sets. However, in Portfolio Manager, you can create groups in your account and look at relative performance of the buildings that you're benchmarking, or through some other activities that I'll mention in a minute, you can kind of compare your data with other data from others around you to find out what your relative performance is more locally. So back to more about the Energy Star certification. When a building scores between a 75 and 100 on our scale, then it's eligible to earn Energy Star certification. As you can see, the label has a date stamped on it. So certification is based on a 12-month period. And then, the label itself has a date on it, so you know when that certification occurred. And the data also must be reviewed by a licensed professional. Many organizations apply every year to keep the date on their certification current. In order to earn the Energy Star, you need to meet minimum ASHRAE standards of 62.1 and 55, which have to do with thermal comfort, ventilation, and illumination. And obviously, as we have all experienced with COVID, that it's really important to understand what the indoor environmental performance is of a facility. And so meeting these standards has become even more important. You can actually exceed these standards, of course, and demonstrate the environmental performance of a facility through sensing technology in a more ongoing routine basis. Our minimum requirement is that the facility meet these standards at one point in a given year. But you can incorporate continuous indoor environmental quality monitoring and use that data for certification demonstration. So as I mentioned, we do certify buildings that earn a 75 or higher on our scale. If you're newly constructing a building, you can design a building to earn the Energy Star. And then after it operates for 12 months at a 75 or higher, it can then be eligible to earn the Energy Star. We also have another competition called the Energy Star Partner of the Year competition. And this is where organizations demonstrate their comprehensive use of Energy Star tools and resources and demonstrates energy savings in their facilities in an ongoing basis. As I mentioned earlier, we have a suite of Energy Star's tools, one of which is Portfolio Manager. And I've listed a few here, and there's some of these resources, there's direct links in the follow-up email that are going to you. And so in order to describe a little bit about what Anthony's going to show you in the demonstration, I want to cover a couple of these resources here. So we encourage organizations to host a competition if they have a portfolio of buildings within their own organization and or are trying to affect the energy performance of other buildings that are not necessarily in their direct ownership. So to explain what I mean more clearly, for example, if you're a local government, you may want to lead by example with your own local government owned buildings and benchmark them and set targeted reduction goals. And then you also may want to encourage either on a voluntary basis or a mandatory basis for building owners within your jurisdiction to benchmark their buildings using Portfolio Manager, set reduction goals, and then meet those goals. So we have something called the Battle of the Buildings, competition resources that you can use to make encouraging energy efficiency improvements fun and interesting, and then recognize those that meet certain thresholds of improvement. For example, you could decide that everybody should strive toward a 20% reduction over a baseline, and that you want to recognize that as a result. These are co-brandable materials with the Energy Star program, and they're ready to use. We have a communications toolkit that goes along with the resources that has pre-written emails and announcements and rules and a time schedule, and really it's very easy to use. And then we also have an Excel tracking sheet that allows you to take the participant performance and then measure who is meeting the recognition milestones. We also offer, if you host a competition or you're just trying to benchmark your own buildings, we offer very robust training online that's either live or recorded. And then we also have a help desk. So you can weave all these things into your own leadership by example initiative in your own facilities and into any initiatives that you have to advance energy efficiency in commercial buildings in your jurisdictions. And as I mentioned, I don't want to leave out water. Many that are hosting competitions are encouraging reductions in energy and water together. And so we also have treasure hunt maps and guides to help you understand your energy efficiency opportunities in the buildings, and an estimator tool that helps calculate the estimated savings for specific types of measures. We are adding water efficiency actions into these treasure hunt guides. On the K through 12 side, we actually have one that's very robust. That's a toolkit for teachers and to work with students to benchmark schools and then conduct treasure hunts for energy efficiency and water. And I'll mention on the school side of things, and of course across other space types, we have a sister division within EPA that has a host of checklists and tools to help organizations understand what their indoor environmental quality improvements need to be in terms of assessment checklists that are integrated with energy efficiency measures. So our motto basically is you can't manage what you don't measure. And so we're encouraging folks to use these free Energy Star tools and resources as a foundation for energy efficiency programs. And also as a foundation for programs that encourage improvement in private sector buildings. And we're here to help. So I'm now going to introduce Anthony. He's our support contractor with the EPA program, and he's going to go ahead and give a live demonstration of our portfolio manager tool in the context of using it to benchmark your own facilities, as well as to conduct or host a competition to encourage others to improve their energy efficiency.
Great, thanks Katie, and thanks everyone for joining today. I'm gonna go ahead and take over the screen share. Okay, and Katie, can you confirm that you're seeing the appropriate screen here, the Energy Star page?
Yes, I am.
Great, thank you. So thanks, folks. My name is Anthony Albano. I'm an associate at the Chemist Group, working in support of EPA's Energy Star program. For today's demo, I'm going to provide an overview of Portfolio Manager and then walk through the process of how to benchmark a commercial office building. And so the first step here is to log in or access energystar.gov, which brings you to this page here. And then you can navigate over to commercial buildings and select benchmark. And there's two different ways to log in here or create an account. So you can see on the right-hand side, there's a portfolio manager page here, or you can also access the portfolio manager login over on the left-hand side. So this brings you to the login page. You can see I already have my credentials entered here. If you don't yet have a portfolio manager account, you can create one by clicking create account. And this just takes a couple of minutes to enter your information here. So once you have an account and you're logged in, you are brought to this page here, which is kind of your portfolio manager landing page. And so I want to just provide an initial kind of lay of the land here. So if we look at the top right of the tool, you'll see there's account settings. This is where you can adjust your contact info, change your password, kind of change the information that you use to set up your account. We also have notifications. This is where you'll see sharing requests from other portfolio manager accounts once you've connected with them. We also have Energy Star notifications. So this is updates from Energy Star, such as score changes or other portfolio manager-wide updates. Also some information specific to your buildings if you're eligible for web services. We also have contacts. So this is where you can add or delete contacts. And in order to share properties, you do need to become a contact first. And that sort of acts like a social media friend request where one person sends a request to someone else. The other person then logs into their account and accepts that request. And then that allows for sharing functionality between those two accounts. And then last but not least, we have the help page here. So this takes you to the Portfolio Manager help page. We have a plethora of resources and access to a FAQs page, which is very helpful. We have a full glossary of terms. We have our list of trainings, both pre-recorded and upcoming live trainings. And then we have access to the help desk that Katie mentioned earlier. So this is really a great resource. And then navigating back into Portfolio Manager, kind of the Portfolio Manager homepage that is, we have 4 different tabs here. So you'll see that I have 6 tabs on my screen, but I have admin and processing simply because I have administrator rights, but you'll just see these first 4 tabs here. So the first one, My Portfolio, this is where you see your full dashboard of properties. So you can see I've got 58 properties here right now. We also have the Sharing tab. This is where you can share properties with other Portfolio Manager accounts once you're connected within Portfolio Manager. We also have the Reporting tab. So this shows a list of your templates and reports. This is also where you can create a data request in order to request data from other accounts. And we'll come back to this page shortly. And then we also have Recognition. This is where you can apply for Energy Star recognition for various building types. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump back into the My Portfolio. And we're going to get ready to create a property in Portfolio Manager. Before we do that, I did want to mention that we have a helpful resource called the Data Collection Worksheet. And so if you're unsure about what data is needed to benchmark your property, you can access this Data Collection Worksheet, and you can simply choose your country, which in most cases will probably be the US, and then you can choose your property type. So we're going to benchmark an office building today. So let's take a look at what's required to benchmark an office. And look up the required data, and you can see here some different fields are populated. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So for example, data collected for all properties such as property name and address. And then we have some specifics that are collected for office, such as operating hours, number of workers on main shift, and number of computers. You can imagine if we're benchmarking a fire station that we might not have number of computers or other metrics that might be specific to an office. So once you have this, you can kind of jot down what you need and then collect the data that you need for benchmarking. So once that data is collected, you can go back into Portfolio Manager, and then let's select Add a Property. So before we do so, I just want to mention that benchmarking is really a three-step process. So the first is to add a property, then you add a meter to that property or meters, and then you add energy consumption to that meter and thus that property. So we're going to start on step one, adding a property. So the first step here, we want to find our office property type here. And then we want to determine if we're going to be benchmarking one building, perhaps a campus of buildings, or none, for example, if this was a tenant space. So in this case, we're going to benchmark one single building. And then we need to decide what the construction status is of this building. So existing, as if it was a normal building in operation, it's already been constructed and occupied. Design project would be one that has not yet been built, but you're looking to design it to Energy Star standards, or a test property. So in this case, we're going to have a test property, but it's going to operate the same functionality as if it was an existing property. And then we're going to assume that our test property here is in operation. So we can go ahead and get started. And then we need to enter some basic information about this property. So I'm going to call it Spear Test 2021. Will be in the US. We'll put this at 123 Main Street, and we'll be in Austin, Texas. With a zip of 78708. And let's say 1985 was when this property was built. And before I continue, I do want to mention that if you hover over these blue terms, you can see that the glossary term pops up, which is really helpful as you're going along if you have any questions about some of the terms used. And another thing to point out is on the right-hand side of the page, you can see there's tips. So this is really helpful as well. So these are tips that are applicable to each stage along the way. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to gross floor area. I'm gonna say that our test property has 216,000 square feet. It's got 0 irrigated area. Again, if you're unfamiliar with that term, you can hover over and see that this is the outdoor vegetated area that's supplied by water. And occupancy, we'll go ahead and assume 90%. I will mention that this doesn't impact the Energy Star score unless it's below 50%. And then if your city or municipality has a standard ID field, you can choose it here, such as Austin or Berkeley. And so you could do so there. And you want to make sure you work with your local government to receive those standard IDs. And then you also want to see down here if any of these 4 selections apply, such as parking areas or data centers. I think for the simplicity of this demonstration, we'll go ahead and assume that those do not apply. And we can click continue. So this brings us to our building use details page. You can see some of the information that we entered on the previous tab. And if you need to edit that, you can do so here. So I'm going to continue to scroll down. Here's our 216,000 square feet. Again, we see those blue terms that you can hover over. And then we also see some stars here. So 5 out of 6 of these fields have stars. And you can see that this indicates that that's a use detail that's required to calculate the 1 to 100 Energy Star score. And speaking of the Energy Star score, if you're going to be applying for certification, you want to make sure that you don't use default values and you also don't use temporary values. It's okay to do so when you're first setting your property up, but I just wanted to flag that. Okay, so weekly operating hours, we're going to assume 65, number of workers on main shift, 390. We'll give them each a computer. Percent that can be heated, we'll say less than 50%, and cooled, more than 50%. Of course, this would be specific to your building in question. So let's go ahead and add that property. And you'll see that we got a green notification box up here that we have successfully created your property. So in this case, step 1 is done, and we now have this Spear Test 2021 property in Austin, Texas. And we can see that we don't yet have any metrics. We have a lot of not availables. This metric can't be calculated. For example, we haven't entered really any energy information yet, so that's understandable. Okay, so the next step would be to add a meter. But before we do so, I want to give a quick overview of what we see here. So again, we're in this Spear Test 2021 property, and we have our summary tab. So this is kind of the landing page for this particular property. It'll eventually show some high-level metrics up here on the right-hand side. And then there's some other helpful information that will populate as we go. For example, there's the data quality checker that we can use to check for errors, which is a really helpful functionality. So navigating over to the details tab, you can scroll down and see some building use details here. If I click this caret, it expands. And I can also make edits if I need to. We also have the property notes field, which is helpful. So I could enter a note such as test and click save. And again, you see this green notification box at the top, which is a really helpful feedback loop. So let's move on to energy. So this is the energy tab where we're going to add a meter in just a minute, similar for the water tab. And then we also have waste and materials, which are benchmarked similar to energy and water. And then we also have goals. So you can set goals for your specific property. And then we also have the design tab if you're looking to design a property not yet in existence. So let's navigate back to energy. And we're going to go ahead and add a meter to this property. So in this case, we're going to add both an electric meter, which has been purchased from the grid, and a natural gas meter. And we can scroll down and click Get Started. So this brings us to your About Your Meter page. You can edit the details by clicking directly into the fields. So I could rename this Test or Example. But it could be helpful to type in your actual meter name, meter number here as well, so that as you're looking at your utility bills, if you have multiple meters, you don't get confused by which one you're looking for. So in this case, the natural gas, the units are going to be in kBTU. And this meter became active January 1st, 2019. So I'm going to go way back. Select January 1st, 2019. And again, if you hover over this term, it essentially tells you that you want this date to align with the first date on your utility bills. So as you know, utility bills often don't start on the first of the month. So this could be, January 15th. In that case, you'd want to just make sure that these align with your utility bill. We're going to assume that this meter is still active. So we don't need to enter any information about inactive date or custom fields over here. These are all optional. So I'm going to move on to the electric meter. And I'm going to select KWH. Again, this would be specific to your utility bills. And I'm also going to select a start date of January 1st, 2019. And we can assume that this meter is still active. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create those two meters. And you'll see the green notification box at the top, which is great. And we'll see that we have two meters here that need to be populated. So we've got our test natural gas meter here. So let's start with that one. So you can enter your bills or your meter information manually by clicking directly into the fields and entering data here. But if you're benchmarking 2 years worth of data, which we are going to do today, it's a little bit more efficient to use spreadsheet upload. So within this natural gas tab, I have the single meter spreadsheet upload. And this is essentially a blank template. So I'll go ahead and show that. And you can see that there's 5 different columns here, 4 of which are required, and 1 is optional, that being cost. So let me go ahead and pull in a natural gas spreadsheet that I've already populated. So you can see I populated this with some sample data. So we'll go ahead and upload that. And we can do that by clicking Choose File, and then navigating over to my desktop where this information is saved. And I'm going to click my natural gas meter. and select upload. And so just like that, we have our meter information populated here. So natural gas is good to go, but we still have an electric meter down here. So we need to populate that as well. And again, you can click directly in, or you can select the single meter spreadsheet. It's worth noting that different fuel types, like natural gas and electricity, have different single meter spreadsheet upload templates. So you can't use the natural gas spreadsheet for uploading electricity data, for example. So again, you'd want to download this single meter spreadsheet, populate it, and then upload it. Another thing you can do, because I have this pre-populated, is you can go to your spreadsheet and you can simply copy and paste the data, not including the headers. So I'm going to copy it. I'm going to click in here, right click and paste. And there we go. The data has populated here. So if this all looks good, you can click continue. And just like that, we've completed step 2 of adding meters, which you see this green notification box at the top. And we do need to just confirm that these are the meters that account for all the energy consumption at this property. In some cases, you might have 6, 7, 10 meters, and you can toggle between which ones actually account for energy at this property. So I'm going to assume that these 2 account for all the energy. And this is called associating the meters. So we've now associated those meters, applied that selection, and now we have scores for this property. And you can see that it's not scoring too well at the moment. So we'd want to check out what's going on here and make some energy efficiency improvements. And we do see that we have 2 different scores here. We have our baseline score, which in this case is 2019 calendar year. And then we have our current score, which in this case is 2020. And if I want to see different metrics here, let's say I want to look at source EUI, I can toggle between those different options here, such as site EUI. And we also have our consumption mapped across this graph here, and some more information about our meters here. So I'm going to follow a similar process and upload a water meter as well. So I'm going to go to the water tab within this Spear Test 2021 property. I'm going to select add a meter. In this case, we're going to choose 1 municipally supplied potable water, be indoor, and there'll just be 1 meter. So let's go ahead and get started. And again, you can click in directly to name this. And in this case, we're going to go with US gallons as the units. We're also going to benchmark 2019 and 2020. So I'm going to go ahead and create this water meter. And again, very similar to the energy meters, you can click in and manually update the information. You can download a single meter spreadsheet that's specific to this fuel type, or in this case, this water. Or we can go ahead and choose a file that we already have pre-populated. And so you can see this Spear water meter, which I've named clearly. It's right there. I'll click upload. And let me take a look at that. So here's the information we have for our water meter. And if that all looks good, I'm going to go ahead and click continue. And again, similar process with associating your meter. So just deciding if this water meter counts for all the water consumption. In this case, we'll assume yes. We can go ahead and apply that selection. So that concludes step 3, adding energy consumption and water consumption to the meter and thus the property. So we can go ahead and look at some of the metrics we have available here. I mentioned the Energy Star score in the top right. You can also go back to the summary tab, and you can see there's a clear comparison between our baseline period, which is 2019, and our current period of 2020. So you can see that the Energy Star score decreased over that time period. We also saw a decrease in, an increase in EUI, which is going from 194 to 203 approximately. We don't have any cost data because that wasn't something that we uploaded. It was optional during that process. And then we also have the option to run the data quality checker or share this property. So what I'm going to do is give a quick example of how to add a contact with the ultimate goal of sharing this property. So what you want to do is go to the contacts tab in the top right. And let's say we want to add a new contact. I can search here for username. I'm going to search for my colleague, Kudret. And you can see a couple of different options appear here. And let's say that this one is the correct Kudret that I'm looking for. I can simply click connect. And just like that, a connection request is sent to Kudret's account. And once he logs in and sees the notification, he can accept or decline my connection request. And then assuming he says yes and connects, we are then connected accounts, and we can both share properties back and forth with one another, which is helpful because with different sharing functionality, you can both collaborate on benchmarking together. So I do have Kudret already connected as an account. So let's say I'm going to go back to the sharing tab, and I'm going to click share. So this is the overall sharing page, and on the top left, I'm going to share access to a property. So I'm going to select that sphere property that we just created. Here it is. I'm going to select who of my accounts or my connected contacts I want to share this with. So I'm going to find Kudret here, and I'm going to choose the permissions. So we have 3 different levels of permissions. We have read-only access, which the recipient can view the property shared, but they cannot make any edits. So in this case, Kudret could just see the information, but not actually make any changes. We have full access, which the recipient can now view and edit the property, and they can essentially do all the same things you can do except for delete the property. So you really want to make sure that that's a trusted contact before sharing a property with full access. Then we also have custom access. So if you select this option, this is kind of a hybrid approach between read-only and full access. You could, for example, give full access to property information. Let's say I actually only want Kudret to be read-only for my meters and goals. I could do it as such. And then another thing you can decide is whether or not you want to include share forwarding, which would allow Kudret to have the opportunity to then share this property with someone else. So I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to go ahead and share with full access. And you can see we get the notification box. You've successfully shared your property. So now Kudret has the same functionality I do to make edits to that property that we just created. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and go over to the reporting tab and talk a little bit about data collection and some of the different reports that we have available here. So we have the charts and graphs on the left-hand side, and you can toggle through by clicking the different images. So let's say we want to look at weather normalized site UI. So I can click directly in, and you can see that this looks at all the different properties across my account that are applicable. So I've got properties across the country, all these sample properties. And then we also have Energy Star performance documents on the right-hand side. So these are specific to one property. So let's say we want to look at the Energy Star scorecard. Going to select this sphere property again. And let's say we want to look at current year timeframe for energy. I can create and download this report, which appears as a downloadable PDF. And you can see my score of 38 out of 100. And some other basic information about this property, such as square footage, the year it was built, and the energy used per square foot. And you can kind of see where my 38 ranks along the scale of 1 to 100. Certainly a little bit of room for improvement here. So those are kind of those 2 functionalities are used to evaluate the properties that you have in your account. But let's say that we actually wanted to request data from other accounts, particularly as part of a competition. As Katie mentioned, a battle of the building style, for example, what you could do is you could go in and create a custom report by using create a new template. And let's say I'm just going to call this Spear Battle of the Buildings. And I essentially select my time frames. Let's say we want to look at 2020, for example. You pick the last day of the last month in that 12-month time frame. So in this case, I would be looking at all of 2020. So January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. I'm actually not going to select any properties here because that would be something that the respondent chooses. But what I can do is I can select the different metrics that I want to collect. So let's say it's really important that I look at address, city, and county. Let's say we also want the zip code. And we can see if there's any other information that we want here, such as property notes. And then you can see on the left-hand side, we have a number of different fields available here, such as property ID numbers. So I mentioned these on our property setup phase. We also have property use details, meter information, and probably the most popular is energy use by fuel source. So let's say I want to take a look at electricity. I don't have any fuel, or let's say we want fuel oil and natural gas and kBTU. And let's say we also want to know if the respondent ran a data quality checker. We can select this box. And let's also collect our Energy Star score of these responding properties. So I've only selected 14 metrics. Typically a data request would have anywhere from 100 to 200 different metrics that you collect, but we'll just keep it simple for this. So I can go ahead and save that template. I can scroll down to my custom report section and I see my Spear Battle of the Buildings template. And let's say I want to use this template to request data from others. I can select this button in the dropdown. This gives me a chance to review some of the information like name, time frame, and location, as well as the metrics that I'm looking to collect from others. And I'll call it Spear Battle of the Buildings Test Instructions. So you'd probably want to have like a website here, more info, that sort of thing here, because once a user receives the data request, this is what they'll see. They'll see the instructions that you typed out here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a link to this data request. And essentially what this says is the only thing you can change from this point on is your instructions. Can't change the time frame, can't change the metrics. So once you click continue, you're kind of locked in. And then what it provides you is with this URL. So you'd want to save this to your records. And then this would be how you kind of promote the data collection process. So what you would do is you could post this URL to your website. You could share it via email. But essentially anyone who clicks this link would be prompted to respond to the data request and provide you with the metrics that we just selected. So switching gears a little bit, pretending that I am the data respondent, I just clicked this link. This is what I would see. So you can see who the data was requested by, which is me. You can see the sample instructions that we typed in here. So this is really prominent. You want to have really clear instructions. And then you also have some information about who to email or call for help. And then you could say, I want to respond with one property. And let's respond with this data request with the Spear property that we just created. I can generate a response preview. And again, just a preview, not a submission. I can scroll down. And let's say I want to take a look. I want to preview what my response might be. Okay, they're collecting address, they're collecting city and county. Okay, we also have electricity information that we're sending over, natural gas. We haven't run our data quality checker, etc. You can also download the information via Excel. So I can go back to this reporting tab. And let's say I'm ready to respond to this data request. I want to provide a response. I can go ahead and send response. I could essentially CC other people that I'm connected with. So maybe I want to make sure Gudret knows that I actually responded to this data request. I can kind of tag him in that. And then I need to certify that I'm okay with releasing this property. I also need to e-sign the response with your username and login information. And then you can go ahead and send the data. And so what I did was I created a data request, and then I pretended that I was a respondent, and then I responded to that data request by providing information about that Spear property that we created. So that concludes the live demonstration portion of this webinar. I think we'll move over to the Q&A portion.
Thank you so much, Anthony. It was very informative. We have a few questions. I wanted to kind of go back for our general audience, and if you could explain more about what EUI means. So explain the acronym, and then what is it and what's the importance? And then we have two other questions that kind of have that same type of focus.
Sure. So EUI stands for energy use intensity. And what it is it's a measure of efficiency. So the formula is fairly simple. It's energy use per square foot. So it's a way to normalize energy use across different facilities, different properties. You might have one property with 100,000 square feet and another with 200,000 square feet. And the way that you can kind of compare those two is using this EUI, energy use intensity, which evaluates energy use on a square footage basis.
Thank you. And I appreciate adding information to everyone about the national conversion factor. And then also thank you for adding the information for the source, the calculation source for EUI.
Sure.
There was also another question, and that person had to jump off, but I was curious. So, there is a push across the nation to really reach out to rural communities more. And so one city said, well, we're fairly small. We only have 20 buildings in the entire city, and our city operates only one building. Is this platform, Energy Star Portfolio Manager, would that be a good platform for our organization to use?
I think absolutely, yes. It's really applicable for small communities with a couple of buildings, large communities with several thousand buildings. We really see the tool is used across that range. So absolutely, totally acceptable to use it for just one building, or you could benchmark 1,000 buildings.
When we're speaking to a smaller rural community, when they only have a few buildings, how have they kind of applied this benchmarking information?
So a lot of times you'll see smaller local communities lead by example by benchmarking their own municipal properties first. And then in some cases, they will create a benchmarking landing page, for example, on their municipal website. And they might say, here are our benchmarking metrics for the last couple of years. And it's a really way to show that benchmarking has value. Benchmarking provides metrics that are helpful to then better understand the energy uses of that property, and then make decisions to reduce the energy use and reduce energy bills as well.
And have you seen where this benchmarking information is pretty helpful when applying it for grants and funding mechanisms to move forward with renewable energy with the federal government?
Yeah, I think it just provides another another view into the property and another view into the community. It's just really helpful to see the data and better understand what kind of energy use is being used. And particularly if you're looking to utilize renewables such as solar, and you want to know how much that solar panel or that solar array is going to offset your energy use. If you're not tracking your energy use, you're going to have a really hard time saying, yes, this solar array will reduce our bills by X, or it'll account for 90% of our consumption. It's really helpful to first understand what you're consuming before you try to cut those bills.
I love the quote that Katie said, you can't manage what you don't measure.
Exactly.
Well, I think that is it for all our questions. And I want to thank you so much, Katie and Anthony, for sharing your time and your knowledge today. And is there anything else you wanted to add before I close?
No, I don't think so. I would just encourage folks to take a look at the Energy Star website. It's energystar.gov, and you can kind of poke around to see if there's more information about commercial buildings or benchmarking. We have a ton of upcoming trainings and resources. So it's really a great place to look for information regarding benchmarking.
Thank you, Anthony. And a reminder, I will be following up with an email with the survey on the webinar. And then once you respond, you'll receive the resources, the link to the YouTube video, because this will be uploaded as well, and the PowerPoint. And I hope that you learned something today. I know I did. And thanks again for joining us, and see you next time. Bye.